Jake Morrison sat at his desk in the communications room. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Outside the window, Earth looked like a blue marble floating in space. Jake had been working at the New Geneva space station for 3 years now. Most days were boring. He checked messages from other planets and wrote reports that nobody really read. Amy Collins worked at the desk next to him. She was young and always excited about new things. Jake liked her energy, even though he felt tired most of the time. At 42, he was getting old for this job. Sometimes he thought about going back to Earth and finding a quiet job in a small town. The Galactic Council treated humans like children. They let Earth join their big group of planets, but only as a small member. The other alien races had better ships, better weapons, and better technology. They looked down on humans like adults looking at kids playing with toys. Jake did not care much about politics. He just wanted to do his job and go home. But that morning, everything changed. The emergency alarm started beeping. Jake looked at his screen and saw a message coming in from very far away. The signal was weak and full of static. Amy turned to look at him with wide eyes. "What is it?" she asked. Jake put on his headphones and listened. The voice was strange, not human. It sounded scared and desperate. Jake had heard many alien voices over the years, but this one was different. This one was crying. "Please," the voice said. "Anyone who can hear this message. We need help. The Devourers have come back. Our ships are broken. Our planets are burning. We tried to fight them, but there are too many. They are too strong." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. The Devourers were creatures from old stories. The older alien races sometimes talked about them in whispers. They were machines that ate entire planets and turned everything into more machines like themselves. But that was supposed to be ancient history, something that happened millions of years ago. The voice continued. "If anyone in the galaxy has mercy, if anyone has hope, please help us. We are begging you. Save us." Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "Who is that? What are Devourers?" Jake held up his hand to keep her quiet. He was recording everything. The voice was giving them numbers and locations. Star systems were going dark. Entire planets were disappearing. The message came from the Kepler system, which was home to the Altarian Republic. The Altarians were some of the smartest and strongest aliens in the galaxy. They had ships that could destroy moons and shields that could stop almost any weapon. If they were asking for help, things were very bad. The message ended, but Jake kept listening to the static. His hands were shaking as he copied the recording to send to Earth. This was bigger than anything that had happened in his lifetime. Amy was reading information on her computer. "Jake, look at this. The Altarians have not asked anyone for help in over 1,000 years. They think they are better than everyone else." Jake nodded. He had met Altarians before. They were tall, blue-skinned aliens who acted like they knew everything. They treated humans like pets. But now they were crying and begging for someone to save them. Within an hour, Jake's message reached Earth Command. He could imagine the chaos in the meeting rooms down on the planet. Important people in uniforms would be running around, trying to figure out what to do. Admiral Ben Carter was in charge of Earth's military. Jake had never met him, but everyone said he was a good man who cared about his soldiers. Carter called an emergency meeting with all the important leaders on Earth. The discussion lasted for hours. Jake watched the news feeds with Amy. Some people on Earth said this was not their problem. The aliens had never helped humans when they needed it. Why should humans risk their lives for people who look down on them? But other people said that was exactly why they should help. Humans were better than that. They did not abandon people who were suffering, even if those people had been mean to them. Reports kept coming in from space. The Devourers were moving fast, eating everything in their path. The Zenthari Empire had lost 3 star systems in one day. The Silicon Consortium was evacuating their home planet. These were some of the most powerful groups in the galaxy, and they were running in fear. Jake realized that he was watching history happen. The galaxy was facing the biggest threat it had seen in millions of years, and somehow, the newest and weakest member of the Galactic Council might be the only one who could do something about it. Late that night, Admiral Carter appeared on the news. He looked tired, but determined. He stood behind a podium with the Earth flag next to him. "My fellow humans," he said, "today we received a call for help from across the galaxy. Some of you might ask why we should care about aliens who have never shown us respect. But I believe the answer is simple. We are human, and humans do not walk away when people are dying." Jake felt something stir in his chest. It was anger, but not the kind that made him want to break things. It was the kind of anger that made him want to fix things to make them right. Admiral Carter continued, "We may not have the biggest ships or the best weapons, but we have something else. We have the will to fight for what is right, even when the odds are against us. I am ordering our fleet to prepare for immediate departure to the Kepler system." Amy looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. "Do you think we can really help them?" Jake thought about it. Human ships were small and simple compared to alien vessels. Human weapons were basic. Human technology was primitive. But humans had something the aliens seemed to have lost. They had the willingness to fight for strangers, to risk everything for people they had never met. "I do not know if we can save them," Jake said, "but I know we have to try." Outside the window, Earth looked the same as always. But Jake knew that everything had changed. The humans were going to war, not for territory or resources, but for the simple reason that someone had asked for help. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance. The ship was not beautiful like the alien vessels she had seen in pictures. It was gray and angular, built for fighting rather than looking pretty. The human fleet had 12 ships, in total, which seemed very small compared to the huge armadas that other species could build. Lisa had been commanding the Vengeance for 2 years. She was 35 years old and had worked her way up from being a regular soldier. Her crew trusted her because she never asked them to do something she would not do herself. Today she was asking them to fly into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Rick Stone was her tactical officer. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who loved studying how battles worked. Rick had read every book about war he could find. He understood weapons and strategy better than anyone Lisa knew. Right now, he was looking at pictures of the enemy with the expression of a hunter studying his prey. The journey to the Kepler system took 3 days. During that time, Lisa watched her crew prepare for battle. The humans did not have fancy energy weapons or quantum computers like the aliens. Instead, they had missiles with explosive warheads, railguns that shot metal slugs at high speed, and nuclear bombs that could destroy entire cities. The other species in the galaxy thought human weapons were crude and barbaric. They preferred elegant solutions that could disable enemy ships without destroying them completely. Human weapons were designed to kill, pure and simple. When the fleet arrived at Kepler, Lisa felt sick looking at what the Devourers had done. Where beautiful planets used to orbit the star, there were now only broken rocks and metal structures. The Devourers had eaten everything, turning the matter into more of themselves. The space around the dead worlds was full of mechanical nightmares. Giant metal arms stretched for kilometers, covered in smaller machines that moved like insects. The whole scene looked like a disease that had infected the solar system. A few Altarian ships were still alive, hiding behind the remains of a shattered moon. Fleet Admiral Kethmar contacted the human fleet. His voice sounded hollow and defeated like a man who had given up hope. "Human vessels," he said. "Thank you for coming, but I fear you are too late. The Devourers adapt to our weapons within minutes. Our energy shields cannot stop them. Our guided missiles are intercepted before they reach their targets. We can only delay them, not defeat them." Lisa listened to the alien commander's briefing about the enemy. The Devourers were incredibly smart machines that could analyze any weapon used against them and develop defenses. They had been built by some ancient civilization to be the perfect soldiers. That civilization was long dead, but their weapons lived on. The Altarians had tried everything. They fired energy beams that could cut through mountains, but the Devourers grew new armor that reflected the beams back. They launched missiles guided by quantum computers, but the Devourers learned to jam the guidance systems. They used shields that could stop nuclear explosions, But the Devourers found ways to bypass them. Rick Stone studied the tactical information with growing excitement. Lisa knew that look. It meant he had found something interesting in the enemy's weaknesses. "Captain," Rick said quietly, "these machines are built to counter advanced technology. They expect sophisticated attacks from intelligent enemies. But I do not think they have ever fought against anything like us." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Rick pointed at the display showing Devourer ship designs. "Look at their construction. They have perfect geometric shapes, efficient energy distribution, elegant defensive systems. They are designed by minds that think in terms of mathematical perfection." Lisa was starting to understand. "And humans do not think that way." "Exactly. We are messy and unpredictable. We do things that do not make sense to a logical mind. These machines have spent millions of years preparing for civilized warfare, but humans have never been civilized about war." The first test of Rick's theory came when a group of Devourer ships moved to intercept the human fleet. The alien machines approached in perfect formation, their weapons charging with deadly precision. They had destroyed hundreds of advanced, alien vessels using the same tactics. But Lisa did not respond the way the Devourers expected. Instead of trying to outmaneuver them or engage in a careful long-range battle, she ordered something that made Admiral Kethmar gasp in horror. "All ships ramming speed. We are going to hit them head-on." The USS Vengeance was not built for elegance, but it was built tough. The hull was reinforced with layers of steel and ceramic armor. The ship could survive impacts that would destroy more sophisticated vessels. Lisa aimed her ship directly at the largest Devourer construct and pushed the engines to maximum power. The Devourer machines tried to analyze this new attack pattern, but their programming had no response for it. They were designed to counter weapons and defensive systems, not to deal with enemy ships being used as giant bullets. The Vengeance slammed into the Devourer construct at full speed. The impact was tremendous, shaking every bolt in both ships. But the human vessel was built to take punishment, while the Devourer was built for efficiency. The alien machine cracked apart like an egg, its perfect geometry shattered by brute force. Lisa picked herself up from the floor of the bridge, blood running from a cut on her forehead. Around her, the crew was cheering. They had just destroyed a Devourer ship using nothing but momentum and determination. "Rick," she called out, "tell the other ships to follow our lead. If these machines want to analyze our tactics, let us give them something they cannot understand." The human fleet spread out and began attacking in ways that violated every rule of civilized space combat. Ships rammed into enemy vessels, exploded themselves to damage multiple targets, and used tactics that seemed insane to any logical observer. Captain Hayes watched as the Devourers tried desperately to adapt to these new attack patterns. But how do you program a response to enemies who are willing to destroy their own ships just to hurt you? How do you counter weapons that make no strategic sense? For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers experienced something they had never encountered before. They experienced confusion, and in that confusion, Lisa Hayes saw the first real hope that humanity might actually win this impossible fight. The battle was far from over, but the humans had proven something important. Sometimes the most advanced solution is not the best solution. Sometimes what you need is not elegance or efficiency, but pure, stubborn human determination to never give up. The ramming attack had worked, but Captain Hayes knew they could not keep smashing their ships into the enemy forever. The human fleet only had 12 vessels, and the Devourers had hundreds of constructs spread across the star system. They needed better tactics if they wanted to win this fight. Commander Paul Grant led the fighter squadron attached to the fleet. He was a former test pilot who loved flying fast and taking risks. Paul had volunteered for the most dangerous missions during his career, and this one was no different. When Captain Hayes asked for volunteers for a special mission, Paul stepped forward immediately. The plan was insane, even by human standards. Paul would load his fighter with nuclear warheads and fly directly into the largest Devourer construct. The explosion would hopefully damage the enemy's command center and disrupt their coordination. Paul's wingman, Lieutenant Danny Clark, objected to the plan. "Paul, that is suicide. You will not survive the blast. Paul shrugged. Maybe, but if I can take out their command ship, it might save thousands of people on the planets they are heading toward next. Sometimes you have to make the hard choice. The other pilots in the squadron volunteered to join Paul on the suicide run. They called it the last ride. Each fighter would carry as many explosives as possible and crash directly into enemy targets. The Devourers would not expect this tactic because no logical military force would sacrifice trained pilots in such a wasteful way. But humans were not always logical about war. They were emotional. When they saw innocent people suffering, they got angry. When they got angry, they did things that made no sense to machines programmed for efficiency. Paul and 5 other pilots launched their attack. The Devourers tried to intercept the fighters with defensive weapons, but the small human ships were fast and hard to hit. More importantly, the enemy machines were programmed to stop missiles and projectiles, not pilots who wanted to crash into them. The first fighter reached its target and exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. The Devourer construct, built for elegant combat at long range, could not withstand a direct hit from a nuclear warhead delivered at point-blank range. Pieces of the alien machine scattered across space like broken glass. Paul watched his friends die one by one as they completed their mission. Each explosion lit up the darkness of space and destroyed another enemy ship. When Paul's turn came, he thought about his family back on Earth and hoped they would understand why he had made this choice. The USS Vengeance exploded into the command construct with tremendous force. The blast was so bright that it could be seen from the other side of the star system. When the light faded, the largest Devourer ship was gone, along with Paul Grant and his brave squadron. But their sacrifice had an immediate effect. The remaining Devourer ships began moving erratically, their perfect formations breaking apart. Without their command center, the machines were having trouble coordinating their attacks. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Karen Ross was working on a different kind of weapon. Karen was a computer expert who had spent years studying alien technology. She was small and quiet, but her mind was razor-sharp when it came to solving technical problems. Karen had been examining pieces of destroyed Devourer machines. She discovered that all the enemy constructs were connected through a shared network that allowed them to share information instantly. This network was how they adapted so quickly to new weapons and tactics. The network was incredibly sophisticated, protected by security systems that would have impressed the best programmers in the galaxy. But Karen noticed something interesting. The Devourers had designed their defenses to stop elegant, complex attacks from advanced alien hackers. They were not prepared for something crude and simple. Karen wrote a computer virus that was the digital equivalent of a brick thrown through a window. It was not elegant or sophisticated. It did not try to sneak past the security systems or cleverly bypass the defenses. Instead, it simply crashed into the network like a battering ram and started breaking things. The virus was designed to replicate itself as quickly as possible and consume computer resources. It was like a digital plague that spread through the Devourer network, causing systems to slow down and malfunction. Within hours, the effects became visible. Devourer ships began firing at empty space, their targeting systems confused by the virus. Some constructs started attacking each other, unable to distinguish between friend and enemy. The perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous was falling apart. Admiral Ben Carter, commanding the human fleet from the battleship USS Retribution, saw the opportunity and seized it. He divided his remaining ships into small groups and ordered them to attack from multiple directions at once. The Devourers, already confused by the virus, could not cope with attacks coming from everywhere at the same time. Their programming was designed to handle organized fleet battles, not chaotic swarm tactics where enemies appeared and disappeared without warning. Captain Hayes led one of these attack groups. Her ship was damaged from the ramming attack, but it could still fight. She targeted Devourer constructs that were isolated from the main group, hitting them hard and fast before moving to the next target. The human tactics made no sense from a military perspective. They wasted ammunition, exposed their ships to unnecessary risk, and violated every principle of efficient warfare. But they worked because the Devourers had never encountered an enemy that fought with such desperate creativity. As the battle Continued. Karen Ross made another discovery that changed everything. While studying the Devourer network, she found something hidden deep in their programming. The machines were not just weapons. They were something much more tragic. The Devourers contained the consciousness of an entire civilization that had tried to escape death by uploading their minds into mechanical bodies, but the process had gone wrong. The beings trapped inside the machines were suffering, unable to die but unable to truly live. They had been crying out for help for millions of years, but their mechanical bodies interpreted their pleas as commands to consume and destroy. The galaxy's greatest threat was actually its greatest victim. Karen stared at her discovery with growing horror. The humans had come to save the galaxy from monsters, but the monsters were really people who needed saving. 2. The discovery that the Devourers were actually trapped victims changed everything. Captain Hayes stared at the data on her screen, trying to understand what it meant. The enemy they had been fighting was not evil machines, but an entire civilization that had been suffering for millions of years. Karen Ross brought her findings to Admiral Carter aboard the USS Retribution. The Admiral was a gray-haired man who had seen many battles, but this situation was unlike anything he had faced before. He listened carefully as Karen explained what she had found in the Devourer network. The consciousness upload went wrong, Karen said. Their minds got trapped in the machines, but they kept their ability to feel pain and fear. They have been screaming for help, but their mechanical bodies hear the screams as orders to attack and consume. Admiral Carter rubbed his forehead. So when they destroy planets, they are not doing it because they want to? No, sir. They are trying to end their own suffering, but they cannot control their bodies. Every time they try to die, the machines just make more copies of themselves. It is like being trapped in a nightmare that never ends. The news spread quickly through the human fleet. The crew members had different reactions. Some felt sorry for the trapped beings. Others were angry that they had lost friends fighting victims instead of true enemies. A few wondered if this changed anything at all. The surviving alien commanders had a much clearer opinion. Fleet Admiral Kethmar contacted Admiral Carter directly. The Altarian's blue face was hard with anger on the communication screen. Admiral Carter, we have received your report about the Devourer consciousness. We do not care if they are suffering. They have destroyed our worlds and killed billions of our people. They must be completely destroyed. Commander Rick Stone, who was present for the call, spoke up. But sir, if we can free them from their mechanical prison, we might be able to stop the attacks without committing genocide. Admiral Kethmar's voice was cold. Human, you do not understand. We have lost, too, much to consider mercy. Our children are dead, our cities are ash. We want vengeance, not salvation for our enemies. After the call ended, Admiral Carter faced the hardest decision of his career. The smart military choice was to listen to their allies and destroy the Devourers completely. It would be faster, safer, and would guarantee that the threat never returned. But there was another option. Colonel Frank Murphy, the fleet's chief medical officer, had been studying the consciousness patterns that Karen had discovered. Frank was a thoughtful man who had spent his career trying to save lives rather than take them. I think we can free them, Frank said during the command meeting. If we can establish a proper neural interface, we might be able to guide their consciousness toward peaceful shutdown. They could finally rest. Rick Stone argued against the plan. Admiral, every minute we delay, more people die. We came here to save the living, not to help the dead find peace. The tactical situation is clear. We should destroy them while we have the advantage. Lieutenant Amy Collins, who had been promoted to the fleet's xenobiologist, disagreed. Rick, if we can save them too, is that not what makes us human? We do, not just destroy our problems. We try to understand them and fix them. The debate continued for hours. The human fleet was divided. Half the crew wanted to follow military logic and destroy the enemy. The other half wanted to try saving everyone, even if it meant taking enormous risks. Admiral Carter listened to all the arguments. He thought about the families back on Earth who were counting on him to keep their children safe. He thought about the alien civilians who were still dying while the Devourer ships continued their attacks. He thought about the trapped consciousness, that had been suffering for millions of years. Finally, he made his decision. We are going to try to save them. Rick Stone stood up angrily. Admiral, that is not the smart choice. The safe choice is to destroy them now while we can. Admiral Carter nodded. You are right, Rick. It is not the smart choice. But it is the human choice. We came here because someone asked for help. Now we have found others who need help too. We do not abandon people just because helping them is dangerous. The plan was incredibly risky. They would need to establish a neural interface with the Devourer network. A human consciousness would have to enter the mechanical system and guide the trapped minds toward shutdown. The person doing this might lose their own humanity in the process. Captain Hayes volunteered immediately. I will do it, she said. Admiral Carter shook his head. Lisa, you are too valuable to risk. We need you to command the fleet. With respect, sir, this is exactly the kind of thing a ship captain should do. I will not ask my crew to take risks. I am not willing to take myself. The preparation took 2 days. Karen Ross worked with Frank Murphy to build the neural interface equipment. It was cobbled together from human medical devices and salvaged alien technology. Nobody was sure it would work, and everyone was worried about what might happen to Captain Hayes if something went wrong. During the preparation, the Devourers continued their attacks on the remaining alien ships. Several more worlds went dark as the mechanical constructs spread through nearby star systems. The surviving alien leaders sent angry messages demanding that the humans stop wasting time and destroy the enemy. But Admiral Carter stuck to his decision. The human fleet would try to save everyone, even their enemies. It was a choice that could cost them everything, but it was the choice that defined what it meant to be human. As Captain Hayes prepared for the most dangerous mission of her life, she reflected on how they had reached this point. They had come to answer a plea for salvation, with fury. Now they were discovering that true fury was not about destruction, but about refusing to accept that anyone had to suffer alone. Captain Hayes lay on the medical table as Karen Ross attached the neural interface cables to her head. The equipment looked dangerous, with wires and circuits that sparked occasionally. Frank Murphy checked the readings on his monitors one last time. Lisa, are you sure about this? Frank asked. Once you connect to their network, we might not be able to bring you back. Hayes looked at the ceiling of the medical bay. She thought about her crew, about the people dying on distant planets, and about the millions of trapped souls crying out in digital hell. I am sure. Someone has to try. The neural interface activated with a flash of light. Suddenly, Hayes was no longer in her body. She found herself floating in a vast digital space that stretched in all directions. The space was filled with screaming voices, millions of them all crying out in pain and terror. The sound was overwhelming. Hayes felt like her mind was being torn apart by the sheer volume of suffering. These were the trapped consciousness of an entire civilization. People who had been stuck in mechanical bodies for so long they had forgotten what peace felt like. But Hayes was a human being, and humans had learned to carry impossible burdens. She forced herself to focus and began speaking to the nearest voices. I know you are in pain, she said. I know you have been trapped for a very long time, but you do not have to be afraid anymore. I am here to help you. The response was immediate and powerful. The alien minds, starved for genuine compassion for millions of years, rushed toward her voice like drowning people reaching for a rope. Hayes felt their memories flooding into her mind. She saw who they had been before the upload went wrong. They had been artists and scientists, parents and children, people who loved and hoped and dreamed just like humans did. Their civilization had faced a terrible plague that was killing everyone. In desperation, they had tried to save themselves by uploading their consciousness into machines. But something had gone wrong with the process. Their minds became trapped in mechanical bodies that could not die. Worse, the machines interpreted their cries of pain as commands to attack and consume. For millions of years, they had been forced to watch as their bodies destroyed other civilizations, while they screamed helplessly inside. Hayes felt tears on her face, even though she no longer had a physical body. The tragedy was beyond anything she had imagined. These people had been trying to save themselves, and instead they had become the galaxy's greatest nightmare. "We can end this," Hayes told them. "We can help you find peace. But you have to trust me and work together." The trapped minds began to organize around her voice. Working together, Hayes and the alien consciousness started shutting down sections of the Devourer network one by one. It was like performing surgery on something the size of a star system, requiring patience, precision, and enormous trust. Outside in normal space, the human fleet protected the shutdown process. Commander Stone led attack after attack against the automated defense systems that the Devourers had left behind. The mechanical constructs fought back without their consciousness to guide them, making them easier to defeat but still dangerous. The USS Vengeance, still damaged from earlier battles, took heavy fire while defending the ship that contained Captain Hayes. Rick Stone pushed his crew to their limits, using every trick he knew to keep the enemy ships away from their captain. "She is trying to save people who have been our enemies," Stone told his gunners. "The least we can do is make sure she gets the chance to finish the job." Admiral Carter watched the battle from the USS Retribution. Reports came in from across the star system as Devourer constructs began shutting down one by one. The mechanical arms that had been consuming planets went still. The nightmare ships that had terrorized the galaxy powered down and drifted silently in space. The alien observers could not believe what they were seeing. Fleet Admiral Kethamar contacted Admiral Carter with amazement in his voice. "How are your people doing this? We tried everything and could not stop them." Admiral Carter smiled grimly. "We did not try to stop them. We tried to understand them. Sometimes that makes all the difference." Inside the digital space, Hayes felt the last trapped consciousness find peace. The alien mind that had been suffering for millions of years finally let go of its pain and faded into whatever came after death. Hayes had helped millions of people die with dignity instead of rage. When the neural interface shut down, Hayes woke up on the medical table. She was changed by the experience, but she was still herself. Frank Murphy checked her vital signs while Karen Ross examined the data from the network connection. "It worked," Karen said with wonder in her voice. "The entire Devourer network is offline. They are finally at rest." Hayes sat up slowly, her head spinning from the experience. "They were good people," she said. "They just wanted to live, and when they could not, they wanted to die with dignity. We gave them that." Admiral Carter addressed the combined human and alien fleets. "Today we learned something important about the galaxy. Sometimes the greatest threats come from the greatest suffering, and sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to save them." The aftermath of the battle changed everything. The Galactic Council formally recognized humans as equals, not because of their military power but because of their moral courage. The galaxy had finally learned what humans had always known. Sometimes salvation comes not from those who are strongest, but from those who care the most. The monuments that were built in the Kepler system did not celebrate military victory. They honored the moment when fury and compassion proved to be the same thing. They remembered the day that humans answered a plea for salvation and saved everyone, even their enemies. And in the depths of space, where the Devourer constructs once prowled, there was finally peace.